What is going on with the Steelers offense?
It's uncommon for an offensive coordinator who's been there, right? I mean, this is his, second year now calling plays for the Steelers. So that's what's surprising about it. Now, I know Mitchell Trubisky's new, but you've had an entire offseason with him. They signed him back at the beginning of free agency, and he's been in the NFL for a while. So you should feel the ability to do a bunch of different things with him. If you needed to simplify things, it would make sense you're simplifying for Kenny Pickett because he's the rookie and he hasn't done this before. And he obviously got there later than when Mitchell Trubisky even got there. And he's still developing chemistry with all those guys. So that's what's surprising. And look, you're going to laugh when I say this. Like, this to me has more to do with Matt Canada than it does Mitchell Trubisky.
I believe you. That sounds completely obvious to me.
Well, one of the things that like people were criticizing the Steelers for is like the lack of pushing the ball down the field. Like everything felt short. Everything felt like it was almost like a kind of a ball controlled dink and dunk offense. And I'm like, well, why are you surprised by that? If you're a Steelers fan, you watched it last year. Like right now they're 31st in net air yards per attempt. Okay.
Is that good?
29th last year.
But here's the difference though. Give
me a second. Because even when you go back further, like it's been 5 years since they were a top 10 team in net air yards per attempt. So it's not like this offense. And by the way, that was under Randy Fichtner. That wasn't even under Matt Canada. So my whole point is like, if you're a Steelers fan that you're frustrated about that, like that's been going on now for the past 4 years. And it's probably been a byproduct of their offensive line as much as anything, not the quarterback, not even the system or the play caller. So, I don't know if he's trying to cover up for the fact that they don't feel like they're in a good spot with their offensive line, or maybe he doesn't feel like Mitch can take that much because this is his first year in the system. Only people in that room know. But it is troubling to watch how much talent they have at wide receiver and then not be able to utilize that more in their game plans.
Yeah, and I think part of the concern for fans anyway, and to your point, it's worth noting that we have no idea what they're talking about during the week, the Steelers, when they're playing this. But Steelers fans' frustrations is that, okay, Big Ben was a problem last year because he was 39 years old and ran a 6-second 40 or whatever. And Mr. Trubisky is the exact opposite of that physically, and it still looks to be the exact same.
Which again speaks to more Matt Canada, right? Like he's got to adapt the offense to play to his skill set. And I think that's one of the biggest issues you have with play callers. You have guys who just call plays, and then you have guys who are looking at the personnel and saying, hey, what do these guys do well? How do I put them in a position to excel in that? And whether that's the types of throws and drops and things that Trubisky does well, or even like the types of routes that some of these guys run, right? Like George Pickens stole the show in the preseason training camp. And you got to figure out a way of getting him some more shots, more opportunities, however you go about doing it. I don't care if it's the fact that you shift and you motion him or you put him in a stack and you disguise different ways of him just running a damn go route. But like figure out how to do that just to give him an opportunity to get his hands on the football or utilize his frame and his speed. That's why you drafted him. So I think that's the frustrating part, at least for me watching them, is how much talent they have and then watching a system that just doesn't really play to anyone's skill set. You're just out there like calling plays on a call sheet.
Yeah, to that point, what does it say to you when typically teams offensively are at their best the first few series because you generally script those plays? The Steelers have scored 2 touchdowns in 8 quarters, and I think you have to go back like 11 games, to find when they scored an opening drive touchdown. I may be wrong on that, but it's been quite a while going into last season. What does that say about the preparation for the 10 to 15 scripted plays when they're consistently not working?
Well, look, the 10 to 15 starters, usually you're practicing those, you're prepared. Sometimes you don't always get the looks that you're looking for. Sometimes you get off script depending on the situation. So it's hard to read into that a ton. I mean, ideally you should be able to script those and you should be able to roll right down the field and score, but you also don't necessarily know based on your preparation going into the game if teams are going to play you the exact way you think they're going to on film, right? Like they're going to have some wrinkles. They're going to have some adjustments. They're not going to show you exactly what they did last week and do that this week, right? I mean, you've got different personnel that they've got to match up with differently. So whether that's, playing more man, playing more zone in various situations or the blitzes or types of blitzes, all that stuff could vary. So I wouldn't read too much into that. Okay. I think that's just been a byproduct again of to me, everything starts up front. And they went from a period of time where you look at back in like 2018, they were one of the better offenses in the NFL, and they had one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. Like, look at the same team or another team in that state in Philly. Philly's doing whatever they want right now. And it's because they have maybe the best offensive line in the NFL. That cures a lot of issues that you have, whether it's that quarterback spot or as a play caller. And not saying that Philly has either of those issues, but it helps solve a lot of those issues when you have maulers up front. And I don't know that Pittsburgh has that group anymore.
No, they don't. I think that's fair. The offensive line has been maybe a little better than expected based on the preseason, but perhaps to your point, that's Matt Canada trying to cover it up with these quick throws. So knowing all that, and there were chances for Kenny Pickett throughout the game on Sunday at home against the Patriots, does it make sense to throw Kenny Pickett out there? I mean, it feels a little early, but they haven't looked great.
No, they haven't. And I think you have to wonder, if this week doesn't go well, granted, short week, kind of tough spot for Trubisky to be in, going into 3 games in the season. But you do have a little extra time to allow Kenny Pickett to prepare for their next opponent. And it's early enough where, even if you're a little bit behind the 8 ball here, you can still climb your way back. Now, you might be able to say that too in the next, 2 or 3 weeks. But the way I look at it, I think that day is rapidly approaching, and it was anyway, the second they drafted Kenny Pickett. I mean, first-round quarterbacks just don't sit anymore. And with the fact that he played at Pitt, we heard the crowd noise too in the preseason, and as good as he played, he didn't give me any indication that he's not ready for that moment, or at least a game plan where he can go in there and execute it. It's just about Mike Tomlin's willingness to put a rookie quarterback in that situation and go and see how things play out. And so, look, I hate that for Mitch Trubisky. He's a really awesome young man.
Mm-hmm.
I really was hoping this was going to be an opportunity for him to kind of capitalize off this, and whether it's in Pittsburgh or somewhere else, be able to kind of find that franchise spot again. But unfortunately, I think he's got some things that are working against him, and he's probably not going to, if things don't turn around here quick, he's probably not going to get that chance.
I'll be honest. Like, he's exceeded my expectations. Like, he hasn't done anything wrong. He threw one interception on a little 8 route or whatever against the Patriots. Whatever. That's anyway. Tom Brady could throw that pick. Otherwise, I think he's been okay. He's been pretty conservative, and perhaps we'll open it up. One last question about the Steelers. We'll talk about the Browns. I heard Ben Roethlisberger actually say this. He said sometimes on a short week, you would condense the playbook and make things easier. Does that sound about right? Is this an opportunity for the offense to open up, even though, ironically, they have less time to prepare?
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes you got basically one day of install and kind of practice, right? And so it's tough. I mean, that was my first start in the NFL, was on a Thursday night. So there's a certain element of like, hey, keep it simple. We don't need to practice a bunch of plays we're not going to end up running. So let's go with the things that we feel confident that we can execute, and let's go with the things that we think are going to work, and then we'll make some adjustments. I think that's the hard thing for the Steelers is, when you look at the fact that they've been having issues offensively, some of that to me is, are they able to make the adjustments in game like they need to in order to be able to find those bigger plays once you kind of settle into what your opponent's doing. I don't know that maybe Matt Canada, Mike Tomlin, or the rest of their staff feels comfortable with some of that, given some of their youth or given the inexperience of Trubisky in this system. So it's hard to tell, but yeah, short week, typically a condensed play or a condensed game plan, and one in which you should feel confident at least in being able to call things that your quarterback feels familiar with. And then hopefully in game, like, you don't have to make a ton of adjustments and have to deal with that.